Hello everybody, so I wanted to spend a moment just analysing Johnny Depp's brief of appeal, or appellate brief. So he's filed the full brief now, it's available online, you can read the whole thing yourself. I'd encourage everyone to do that. 44 pages, I found it via the Law and Crime Network. There's a number of places it's got. If anyone's interested, have a look yourself, have a look. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I am an analyst, fully qualified, and I have had a lot of experience doing legal analysts. It's not the only type of analyst I do. I've done 8 years of that. So look, if you want to get the legal arguments, go into a lawyer channel. You're not going to get that from me. I'm going to touch on it, but I've borrowed a little bit from other lawyers and what they've said, but that's not what I'm talking about today. My main focus today, and with everything I do, is not the legal legal argument. I'm looking at the analysis. So essentially, I'm going to give you the numbers. I'm going to crunch the numbers and work out for you the chances of this working. I'm going to give you a number, a percentage chance or a ratio, whatever it might be. Give you those numbers so you can work out how likely that is. Now, I gave numbers throughout the actual trial itself, and I had said, just for reference, that as at the start of the trial, having no idea about the content of the case, I put it as a ratio of 20,000 to 1 that Amber Heard would win. I thought that she would win. She was massively favoured to win. But as the evidence came in, those numbers changed. I didn't think Johnny Depp was going to win until about 2 days before the final judgment came, or before they finished giving their argument, I should say, because based on the evidence and based on the rules of law. So it's not about who I like. I'm not a Johnny Depp fan, not an Amber Heard fan, not an Amber Heard hater, nothing to do with that. I don't really care about Johnny Depp either way, and I don't know who Amber Heard is. So that's sort of my viewpoint of them. I think Johnny Depp is a reasonably good actor, but not particularly great. Amber Heard's quite a long way below him, but so what? There's a lot of people that are not that good at being actors. Has nothing to do with whether I like them. Has nothing to do with my analysis. So anyway, out to it. So Johnny Depp has released his full 44-page appellate brief. They're allowed to go up to 50 pages. He went pretty close. And he's essentially got one thing he is appealing, which is the sole judgment against him about one of the 3 Adam Waldman statements. So I'm not going to get into all the legal arguments. If you want to read that, there's 44 pages worth you can look at. I'm just going to dumb it down for you as to what his 3 avenues for appeal are. So essentially the first one, which is his weakest. So the weakest of the 3, and I'm going to give the lowest percentage chance of winning. This is the first one that he wants the appeals judges to look at. So if the appeals judges end up looking at this the longest, he'll probably win. Because if he wins this one, he wins the case. They're not even going to look at the other 2. Because these are sort of, they're based on each other. So you win the first one, you've won the second and third. You win the second one, you don't have to look at the third. It goes like that in a hierarchical way. So in a sense, there's only one appeal basis. So he's fine with everything else. Absolutely fine. Not complaining about the amount of money. Not complaining about anything else. Just complaining about this. And the first part that he's complaining about is that he has said Adam Waldman is not Johnny Depp. Therefore, if you want to sue Adam Waldman, go ahead and sue Adam Waldman. That has nothing to do with Johnny Depp. So that is the basis of the first part of the appeal. That's the dumbing down of it. And it makes sense. You sort of think, well, why is Johnny Depp being sued for what Adam Waldman said? Well, how does that make sense? And I think to an everyday person, if you presented that to an everyday person, they go, what the hell? And that's what they do. Now, the appeal is not that the jury got it wrong. You're not allowed to, well, you can appeal for if a jury got it wrong in some cases, but that's not what they're doing. They're putting in the argument that the jury actually didn't get to decide this because it wasn't presented to them. The jury was just told, oh, he is an agent. Adam Waldman is Johnny Depp. They were just told that he was, and therefore made decisions based on that. But it wasn't a fact, and that should have been presented to the jury. And it's hard to get around that. You sort of look at that and you go, well, would a jury have decided that he was Johnny Depp? Probably not. And why didn't they get it presented to them? So the judges on the Court of Appeal will have to decide on those two factors. They'll have to decide, well, number one, why on earth wasn't that shown to the jury? And number two, if it was shown to the jury, were the jury likely, and they can never know what the jury might think, but were they likely to find that he was the same person or acting on Johnny Depp's behalf? And this gets into the whole concept of being a lawyer and what a lawyer means to a client. Lawyers can be instructed, but in the end lawyers do their own thing, and there are cases where people sue their lawyers because the lawyers go off and do their own thing. Of course, was this something which Johnny Depp presented it as, he said, I'll go and say these things to this newspaper on my behalf? Is that what happened? Because that needs to be what happened in order for this to win. So we didn't even hear in the trial court, we didn't hear any arguments from Amber Heard's side to say, this is definitely the same person as Johnny Depp. And curiously enough, and it was revealed in this appellate brief, Amber Heard's team had originally planned to sue Johnny Depp directly for defamation, but the court threw that out. Now I don't know if she's going to put that in her appeal, it's not mentioned, but they threw it out. There were two parts where Johnny Depp had apparently said something about her directly, and that was thrown out by the judge as just completely impossible. So it's what they call demur, which basically means, this is just so ridiculous, let's chuck it out. So they were left with the three Waldman statements. So we don't know what it was that Johnny Depp allegedly said that's not in there. Whatever else, it didn't even make it to court. So, but we know that these three statements, and we're not appealing the other two. The other two, the jury found him, he's not liable. No, he didn't do anything wrong. So Johnny Depp's fine on that. But this one, and I'm not going to get into what the one is. That's a bit of a legal argument. Again, I'm not a lawyer. So this is from an analytical point of view. What is the situation there? And this is his weakest argument, but it's still a very strong argument. And look, there is a way to sort of say, and depending on what Amber Heard's team say, they could say, look, but he is his agent. And I've read some other bits, and people have said this, well, but he was his lawyer. This was his speech. He was instructed to do this. And so I'm going to put this at somewhere between about 70 to 80% chance of success. So about a 20 to 30% chance of failure. That's my sort of variance. Most likely Johnny Depp will win this. Most likely Johnny Depp will win this at the first step, and you won't even hear the second or third steps. The judges won't deliberate on them, or they'll just say, and therefore the second and third steps win as well. Most likely that will happen. But this is his weakest case. So the second and third cases are stronger, and they get stronger with each leg of them. So the second part of it is essentially the argument that says that, well, it was taken out of context. So it's saying, well, actually, they didn't present the whole article, and they didn't for any of the others either, but they redacted so much that the jury were just looking at it and go, okay, so out of context, this looks defamatory. But if you put the whole thing into context, the rest of his statements and the statements made by the other lawyers and the rest of the article, you can say, look, this is actually in context not defamatory at all. And again, it's not a mistake that the jury made. They're not complaining about the jury. They're complaining about the judge for including it as just a redacted partial quote. And I guess one thing to remember is, if we had a look, as an example, at when the kitchen cabinet scene, which, as we now know, Amber Heard videotaped that and sent it to TMZ. So if you were looking at the one from TMZ, you have no idea that Amber Heard sent it. You're missing that bit at the start, you're missing that bit at the end. Bit at the start where Amber Heard's laughing and setting it up, and the bit at the end where she giggles. So without that bit, it can look like Amber Heard was threatened. But if you understand the context of the start and the end, you can see that it was a massive setup. She wasn't in any danger at all. And that context is essential. And the jury they got the full unredacted version of the kitchen cabinet scenes and gave a completely different view to the judge in the UK trial who didn't see the unredacted version. And when you see it out of context, you can form completely different views. So again, you've got to look at that and you say, well, if you're a jury member And if you'd seen it in proper context, would you have made the same decision? Was it fair that the judge just excluded 90% of the article and only put the bits that made him look bad? So when they were looking at the defamatory statements of Amber Heard, they showed the whole article. So they didn't show the whole article about Adam Waldman, and that's not fair. So what percentage do I put for that? I'm going to put it about 90 to 95%. There is still a tinsy little argument that says, well, but we were trying to hide their privacy and doesn't make any difference to the context because it's still a quote. Okay, there's still a possibility there. But most likely, even if it gets past that first hurdle, the judges in the Court of Appeal are still going to find in Johnny Depp's favour on that second case. Then we have the third argument, and this one is essentially saying, all right, so all of this, but it still was an opinion. So, I mean, they've said it was factual as well, but then they're saying, but this is an opinion as a lawyer. So a lawyer is a legal argument. He's presented as a legal argument. It's presented. And when you're, as a lawyer, you're representing someone, it's always an opinion. Even if you state it as a fact. I think most people know that. So it's not stated as a fact, it's stated as an opinion. And I guess the thing is, there is still a little sliver here. Because the sliver is, well, but he didn't say this is my opinion. He said this is what happened. He didn't say this is a fact either. It's implied that it was an opinion, but of course, jury reading it out of context might think that it was stated as a fact. But the jury didn't get to hear any of that. They weren't allowed to hear it. Which is, again, we're not talking about the jury making a mistake here so much as the jury didn't get to hear the facts about this, didn't get to hear it in proper context. So I'm really struggling to find any way that the judges won't find in Johnny Depp's favour there. So my argument here is like 99.5%. It's tiny. I can't quite say 100% because who knows what corrupt things might happen or what weird things might happen, but there's just no way. So overall, his case is 99.5% chance of winning. Of course, that might change depending on what Amber Heard's team say in rebuttal. Even if they don't put in their own appeal, they can still defend this. But at this stage, it really does look like Johnny Depp's going to win. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye-bye.